Saquarema City, 22, 2022, second part of our conversation. The first conversation, we could present the functional relation at the election, considering the circuit, which was presented in the previous chart, that is erased because it's this board. See? So we will observe that the counting of voters that indeed are doing the vote made by a box machine or by a human resource, but as a group that is counting the votes must be the same. But they do not have the same input as counting, because here we are having a box machine. The other situation, we have a box which is not a machine, it's a box. And here you have the entrance of the vote as voters. Here you have the machine. Here, and you must have the communication line. Here you have the voters that will apply the choice, and the box is not a box machine. You have a group of human resources doing the counting of votes, and you have the output. And here, the same way, you have the output. See, the output is the result of your function. It's the epsilon. The epsilon can have as result a behavior kind of almost linear. And you check that we will consider only for have the sense that your function as linear function is your function, the variable and the quality that you, or the quantitative argument that you are observing, plus an independent term or notation. In general, like this, we broke this situation considering that the machine will count the voters. The voters is your X, But in Brazil, you don't have the human resource counting the votes. And you will observe that the result is machine associated with the votes, the voters, must be equal as the independent signal at the electoral procedure of Brazil. In America, it's different. It's kind of your X as voters, and the A is a human resource. And in USA, you will have something like this. It's kind of here is your standard counting as Brazil. Here is your standard counting as USA, which will be this. In Brazil, you have the voters X associated with the box machine A, having no independent counting of vote because it's made by a machine according with the rules at the procedure. In America, you have the voters associated with the box that's not a machine, has a human doing the counting. And we must observe that if you have no fraud, it doesn't matter if you do the counting of voters by a machine or by a box machine, by a human resource doing the counting of voters. If we have failures, we will observe that we have the AX as estimative, the AX as estimative. I will put here like this, considering that we will have names now as A and B. See? As control of to both, because it's the complementary relation, we will observe that the relation A and the relation B are not equal by the method to quantify the votes. Here you have the box machine, here you have the human resource. See? But we will observe that the relation will be a relation and not functional if in any one of those cases do not match with the B as the paradigm. You know, it means that the counting of voters by a machine or the counting of voters by a human resource will be easy controlled as comparative measurement by the exclusive choice that it's not used on your electoral system. If you use the counting of votes by a box machine and when you do the counting of votes by a human resource, you do not have the same measurement, your failure here will be explicit, like the failure at the box or the failure at the voters, but in this case it's an association. It's this intercourse here. This intercourse here as association. You know that the problem is at this period here. In the same way, you observe that if you do the counting of votes by a human resource, and when you put this, run this at the machine, like the IBM in the very ancient time did with that cards, you probably will observe that if you do not have the same result at the machine, considering that your method at your electoral system and do the counting of votes by a human resource, you will observe that your failure is something like this: A as electoral procedure with the failure at the association between voters and box machine. If we got this failure, the failure number 1 as segment. Now we will have the failure B as counting of voters in USA by a human resource. If do not have the same result like the box machine, very similar to that punch cards in the very early days of IBM, we will check that we have the B as counting of voters and the relation between the voters and the human resource doing the counting of voters. The machine, you can shut down the box machine and have a new fresh start with a new counting of votes. Is something that you can do. And you can, for instance, erase things. You can do the program of this And you can, after do this, like you do at the modifier data and the migration, erase the original records. You do this all the time in public departments in Brazil. You know that you do. But the human resource they can, have questions sometimes and observe things. But I would like to have the machine. I will be obsessive, you know. And I will check that this crap here, having a crude reading view, is an entrance of information by a human resource. It's just an input. And this input will give me an output. Right? Right. And it doesn't matter which will be the input, the quality as a voter or the money that I'm taking at the box machine that give me money, like you have at the gas station or something like this, that for sure have the same pattern as be at the communication sector, having the requirement as input, which you have to do the digits of the number as money that you receive, and the machine will have the output as the money that you required, the number of as operation, which is possibility instead of candidates are the banks, the bank A, the bank, the value, you know, very similar the procedure. Now we can have our comparative model. Second one, the first one we could expose how the failure goes, how you will do the interrogatory as hearing procedure of the variables, human resource counting the votes, or you can do this in the same way at the voters, because sometimes will be at, at the scam, like you had on Europe at the 90s, right? Complained by friends. Then we will check that the counting of votes will have my box machine, and I will have my box machine that is give me money, right? Right. They two both are going at the communication sectors. Com, com, right? Right. They two both have two things here. We will divide as the provider of cybersecurity. We'll put as number 1. And the company or institution that is doing this as a contract. I can observe that I have risks, or I shouldn't do this audit at the cybersecurity because it's a box machine. It means that the two both are a box machine. Box machine. I by the box machine inside the database Sigma. Now you shred this. Eat and shit. You will observe that the cybersecurity is a problem. And this problem goes at the box machine, and the cybersecurity has the first hidden element as the communication. Com. But we could observe that it's not hidden as but as failure at the communication sector, which implies now the real hidden element as the number two. The number two is the drill down of this box machine trouble, which is who is doing the hiring process at the as cybersecurity and institutional use as box machine. Guess what? We have here a human resource, that filthy animal, you know. We'll finish our presentation here, our very, lovely conversation, and we will move on. It's a free audit. See? Have a good night.